Hi, it's Sunday, May the 10th. Happy Mother's Day to you. And I have good news for you today as we are 1 week closer to winning this battle against the COVID-19 illness. Definitely, we have seen improving signs over the course of the last week or two. We're glad to say that the numbers for the United States over a 2-week span are down about 16% in terms of new cases, and that certainly is good news. Death counts are down about 10% over the course of the past week, so all of those are encouraging signs. I suspect that you're like me and rather exhausted from hearing people debate back and forth as to is this a hoax and is there some kind of plan behind what's going on, and it just is becoming an exhausting thing. And let me just suggest to you that with the encouraging signs that we're seeing, there really is hope that the warming temperatures may be a part of what's causing this. Maybe that's the driving force in that because we haven't really changed behaviors that would bring the numbers down. Let me just put this in perspective and give you an idea of what maybe we can expect going forward. Up until 6 months ago, there were 6 different coronaviruses among all of humanity. 2 of those you know by name, SARS and MERS. SARS appeared in China 18 years ago. It was deadly. It killed about 9% of the people who got the disease, but it didn't spread far. It went to about 35 countries, didn't kill a large number of people, isn't a major threat today. 10 years later, MERS came along, Middle Eastern Respiratory Syndrome. It was very deadly in terms of it killed 35% of the people who got it, but it did not spread well at all. In 8 years, it's only infected about 2,500 people, so it's not a significant health concern today. But consider for a moment the other 4 coronaviruses among the human population. Those are the ones that we're familiar with. You don't need to know what the names of those are. They all are very common illnesses. They cause about 1/3 of the common colds. About 1/3 of the colds that you've ever had in your life are probably one of these 4 coronaviruses. And the important thing about these 4 is, number one, they don't kill hardly anyone, but secondly, they not only run their course in a short span of time, but they're seasonal. They respond to a warming temperature in the summer, and so that's why you don't have a lot of colds caused by coronaviruses in the summertime. And the reason that we care about that is because scientists and researchers are hopeful that that'll be an indicator of what the current novel coronavirus, the COVID, the SARS-CoV-2 virus that we're currently dealing with, if it shares that in common, then the reason we're seeing the numbers go down may be because of rising temperatures in the northern hemisphere. And I'm just pointing this out to you to say, if that's what's going on, it is certainly good news. It'll give us a break this summer, but what you will hear is just a continuing rise in the cacophony of voices who are saying, see, this was all a big hoax. This is not a big deal. It was overblown. It was all a ploy by the media or whatever. Don't buy that garbage. The crisis is real. The current illness is going to run a particular course, and if it is temperature sensitive, then we'll see the numbers stabilize or go down this summer, even as restrictions are being lifted. That will be a good thing, but it doesn't change the fact that we are going to see a second wave coming. It'll just mean that hopefully we get a break until the fall before it does come. But I want you to consider for a moment, as we're watching over the course of the next several weeks to see if it's going to stabilize or continue to go down, or if it's going to rise as we see the brakes taken off, as people are allowed to go back to their normal routines. I want you to really pay attention to what's going on around us in terms of the ways that people are responding. It's been quite a predictable thing. People are afraid, whether they recognize that or not. People's behaviors are being driven by fear. They're afraid either concerning their own health or the health of those that they love, or they're afraid for their financial futures. But fear is driving us in a couple of very predictable ways. And fear will cause us in a situation like this where it is chaotic, it's random, it's a very real danger and threat to us. And so we'll do typically one of 2 things. We'll either run toward denial, and you hear people doing this very commonly now. That's why you see people waving their signs and posting stuff to say, this is a hoax, it's not real, that this whole thing has just been presented as something other than what it is. That's not based on good science or on facts. It is just denial, in much the same way that people would come to the conclusion that it's still a flat earth, or that no one's ever been to the moon, or any other such foolishness. It's just a matter of denial that's driven by fear. Or fear will drive us to another place. And it takes a moment to describe, but you'll understand it. The human mind absolutely hates randomness and chaos, especially in relation to anything that's a threat to us. The human brain really can't stand and always wants to create order out of disorder, because the human brain just hates anything that seems completely random. And so we'll try and always create order out of that. It's the reason that when you look at the sky and you look up at clouds, your brain will immediately try and turn those clouds into recognizable things. You'll see a head, you'll see a tree or a bird or something in the clouds, even though that's not what it really is. You're trying to create order out of chaos, and we'll do the same thing, particularly when it's a random threat to us. We can't stand that. It's so disturbing to think that something would be dangerous, random, and completely beyond our control, and so we will attempt to impose order on that. And that's what people are doing by trying to make sense of this in saying, oh, this didn't just happen, this was planned. It's a plandemic, not a pandemic, and these are the villains who are behind that. And so they'll point a finger at Dr. Fauci, or at the president, or at the Chinese, or at Bill Gates, or the shadow government, or the billionaires who are behind this, who are causing this crisis so that they can come back and sell us a vaccine or decrease the world population or some other kind of foolishness. We're trying to grasp at something chaotic to create order and meaning in that. And quite honestly, it's a bit disturbing, but Christians will do their own version of the same thing. We will either try and take this chaotic situation and say, oh, I know the meaning behind that. It's the wrath of God. It is the hand of God's judgment, which to me seems like utter foolishness. I don't believe it's the hand of God. We love to blame God for every bad thing that happens. Or else, as a Christian response, we'll say, oh, well, this is the thing that's the clear sign that we're moving toward one world order, and this is the indication that Jesus is about to return. And honestly, as a Christian, I get exhausted even with those kinds of responses. I don't see anything qualitatively different between the tragic and chaotic situation that we're dealing with now from so many other things that have preceded it, whether it be world wars or the Spanish flu a century ago, or any number of other tragedies. These kinds of things are going to come and go, and we don't control them. And as much as we'll try to explain them by creating some kind of villain, we're not making anything any better when we do that. In fact, we're making things worse. It's been said, and rightly so, that not every culture necessarily believes in a God, but they all have to believe in a devil. There have been cultures in history that didn't realize that there's a God. But virtually every culture has to have a devil in their perspective, in their collective thinking, because they always need a way to explain the random bad things that happen. And in this case, we're creating our own devils by pointing our fingers at all these different people, oftentimes people who are working to try and help us get through this, and instead of appreciating that, we're trying to turn them into the devil. So let me suggest to you this. As we move forward, if in fact we see the numbers stabilizing or going down, let's receive that as a gift from God and a good thing, and take advantage of the break that we're given to prepare ourselves for what's ahead, not in a panic, but appreciative of the break that we're given, if we do indeed get that. And instead of using that as an opportunity to say, see, this was a hoax, this wasn't really a threat, and all these other foolish things, why don't we choose instead to be grateful and to do a couple of really positive things? Let's lean into God, trusting Him to get us through this and what lies ahead, and let's choose to trust our fellow man. Maybe that's one of the most important messages in this, is not only that we learn to trust God in hard times, but we learn to trust each other. And maybe we could choose to believe that the men and women who have dedicated years and even decades of their lives preparing for a moment like this and putting their all into helping us get through a season like this, instead of blaming them and treating them as if they're the cause of this, that they're the brain trust that brought this on, why don't we choose to trust our fellow man that they are indeed helping us to get through this? We're going to make it through this, but we need to choose to stay positive. We need to trust God and trust each other. I'm Mark Price, reminding you to stay safe, to stay in touch, and to stay positive, and always remember that you are loved.